Okay, everybody, we are now going to look at page 10B for your second half of your graphic organizer for this unit. We're going to start by talking about the Protist kingdom. The Protist kingdom is kind of a catch-all kingdom that includes three different groups. There are plant-like protists, which are called algae. We have animal-like protists, which are called protozoa. And we have fungus-like protists, which are called slime molds. So there's an example of algae. There's an example of a protozoan, and there's an example of a slime mold. Algae are the plant-like protists. You have a space on your graphic organizer to draw a simple diagram of algae. Pick one of these two to draw. We have some algae that are unicellular, so you can only see them with a microscope. And then we have other algae that are multicellular, and they look like plants, but they're not. They're in the the protist kingdom, not the plant kingdom. The other thing to make a note of on your graphic organizer is that these algae are producers in the food web. That means they produce food through photosynthesis. They are the base of the food web, and they also produce oxygen. In fact, most of the Earth's oxygen doesn't come from trees, it comes from algae. Next, we have the protozoa. Protozoa are the animal-like protists. You need to make a note that protists, including protozoa, have certain adaptations to help them carry out their life functions. And if you move down to the bottom of your graphic organizer, you will see a space to write in what each of these adaptations is used for. So for example, some protozoa have a flagellum. Flagella is plural, flagellum is singular. This is a whip-like tail shown here on the picture that allows them to move. Some protozoa have cilia. Cilia are the hairs. You can see that along the outline of the shape of the paramecium in this picture. These cilia are tiny hairs that are also used for movement. And some protozoa have false feet called pseudopodia. They are labeled in this picture. Pseudopodia are actually extensions of the cell membrane, so it kind of oozes along and pushes its cell membrane in the direction that it wants to go. Protozoa also have adaptations to help them live in an aquatic environment and get rid of the extra water. So shown here, you can see in the animation, the contractile vacuole. The contractile vacuole pumps extra water out of the cell. If it wasn't able to do that, then because of osmosis, it would ultimately explode. It has to have a way to get rid of that extra water, and that is done by the contractile vacuole. And then finally, we have some protozoa which have eye spots. Eye spots are shown in the picture. Eye spots are used to help them detect light. They can't see, but they can detect light. And this is important for protozoa that have the ability to photosynthesize, because in order to photosynthesize, they need light. So they have to be able to detect that light and move toward the light for photosynthesis. Make sure you've written down the purpose of each of those adaptations in the space provided, and make sure you have illustrated at least one of these several examples of protozoa in the space provided. Protists reproduce asexually through binary fission. You can see that in the picture with the pink cells. Binary fission is when you start with one cell and it splits into two cells of equal size. Another way that they reproduce is through fragmentation of algae. That is shown in the picture, where a piece of algae break off and they become two new separate organisms. They also have the ability to exchange DNA through conjugation. Remember that that allows for genetic variation. Some protists cause diseases. Malaria is a protist that is pathogenic. Pathogenic means that it causes a disease. The name of the protist that causes malaria is Plasmodium. Plasmodium is the protist that is shown inside the red blood cells in the picture. This plasmodium is carried by the mosquito. Most people think that mosquitoes cause malaria, but they don't. They carry the protozoan, plasmodium, that does cause the disease malaria. Next, we have the fungus kingdom. Fungi can be unicellular or multicellular again, so made of one cell or made of many cells. All of the fungi shown in this picture are multicellular fungi. So please make sure you write that in. Fungi are heterotrophic. An autotrophic organism is a self-feeder. It makes its own food, like a plant. But a heterotrophic organism has to take in food. Fungi obviously don't have mouths to allow them to do that. So they are able to excrete enzymes, and that's the enlargement that's shown in the picture. All of that bubbly looking stuff, those are enzymes. And they then digest their food outside the body and absorb it through the cell wall. So they are heterotrophic organisms. Make sure you write that in. Fungi also reproduce asexually. In the picture that is gray, black and white, you can see yeast budding. Budding is when they split into two cells of unequal size. And then in the other picture, you can see spores that can be used for both asexual or sexual reproduction. Spores are packets of DNA, and the life cycle of a fungus and how they use spores to reproduce is very complex. But right now, you just need to know that spores can be used asexually or sexually. There are pathogenic or disease-causing fungi as well. Candida is a disease-causing fungus that infects moist skin tissue and leads to diseases like thrush, yeast infections, or kidney infections. This is an example of what Candida looks like in the mouth. A lot of times babies get it. It's painful, but it's not deadly. So many fungi are good. They are decomposers. They do important things for us in ecosystems. They also help us to make food with things like blue cheese and that kind of stuff. And some of them are pathogenic. Some of them can cause diseases.